The art of truth. They say the most dangerous lies are the ones wrapped in beauty. I should know. For 5 years, I built my career authenticating masterpieces worth millions, never realizing I was the one being counterfeited. My name is Nadia Vance, and this is the story of how I brought down an empire built on forged art, fake provenance, and very real crimes. The morning I decided to resign from Thorne & Sons auction house started like any other. The September rain hammered against the windows of our Manhattan office as I sat across from Victoria Thorne, my resignation letter trembling slightly in my hands. She hadn't looked up from her computer screen yet, those manicured fingers still clicking away at her keyboard, as if my presence was merely a minor inconvenience. "Victoria," I began, my voice steadier than I felt. "I need to talk to you about something important." She held up one finger, still typing. The vintage Cartier watch on her wrist caught the light. Everything about Victoria Thorne was calculated perfection, from her sleek black hair to her designer suits that cost more than most people's monthly rent. After what felt like an eternity, she finally looked up, her gray eyes as cold as the granite countertops in the restoration lab. "Nadia, darling," she said, that familiar, condescending tone making my skin crawl. "Whatever it is, make it quick. The Dubai investors will be here Thursday, and we still haven't finalized the authentication reports for the Han Dynasty collection." I placed the envelope on her desk, pushing it across the polished mahogany surface. "I'm resigning, effective immediately." The typing stopped. The office fell silent except for the rain and the distant hum of traffic 30 floors below. Victoria's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes, like a predator suddenly aware of movement in the grass. She picked up the envelope, extracted the letter with deliberate slowness, and read it. Then, without warning, she tore it in half, then quarters, then eighths, letting the pieces flutter onto her desk like snow. "You think you can just walk away, Nadia?" Her voice had dropped to a whisper, somehow more terrifying than if she'd screamed. "After everything you know? After everything you've seen?" She stood, moving to the window that overlooked Central Park. "You've trained Maya well, I'll give you that. But Maya doesn't have your eye. She can't spot a forgery from across a room like you can. She can't tell the difference between Qing and Ming Dynasty porcelain by the weight alone." Victoria turned back to me, a smile playing at her lips that never reached her eyes. "The Han Dynasty collection arrives next week, the Dubai investors on Thursday, the opening gala in 3 weeks. You're not just an employee, Nadia. You're an asset. And assets don't get to resign." My hands clenched in my lap. 5 years of suspicious transactions, questionable authentications, and pieces I'd rejected that somehow still made it to private sales flashed through my mind. "Maybe you should check the parking garage," I said quietly, meeting her gaze. Victoria's smile faltered. She moved to the window again, looking down. 3 black SUVs with tinted windows had pulled up to the main entrance. Men in plain clothes but with the unmistakable bearing of federal agents were stepping out. "What did you do?" she hissed, spinning to face me. I stood, pulling a small USB drive from my pocket and holding it up. "What you taught me, Victoria. I protected the assets, just not the ones you thought." She lunged for her desk drawer where I knew she kept the encrypted hard drives with client information, but I was already backing toward the door. "It's too late," I said. "They already have copies of everything. 3 years of falsified authentication reports, the real reports versus the ones you filed, the email chains with Damon about aging techniques for his forgeries. The offshore accounts, all of it." A knock at the door made us both freeze. Mac Reed, our head of security, stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "Miss Victoria, there are some people in the lobby asking to see you. They say it's urgent, something about art authentication records." "Tell them I'm busy," Victoria snapped. Mac shifted uncomfortably. "They have a warrant, ma'am." Victoria's gaze moved between Mac, the window, and me, calculating rapidly. Then she straightened her jacket and walked past me, pausing at the door. "Whatever you think you know, it won't stick. I'll be back this afternoon, and when I am, you'll wish you'd never done this." As she reached the doorframe, I called after her. "Every collector you defrauded received a package yesterday. Inside was proof that their precious investments are worthless forgeries. And documentation showing exactly who sold them those fakes." Victoria went still. "These aren't just regular clients you've been scamming, Victoria. These are people with influence, with connections, with very expensive lawyers who don't like being made fools of." I let that sink in. They've been comparing notes. "You think the FBI is your biggest problem right now?" The look she gave me could have frozen hell itself. Then she was gone, Mac trailing after her. I sank back into the chair, my whole body shaking. It had been 3 months since I'd first contacted FBI agent Isabella Reyes about my suspicions. 3 months of gathering evidence, of late nights copying files, of pretending everything was normal while building a case that would destroy the company I'd once been so proud to work for. The journey to this moment had started with a single painting. A Japanese scroll painting supposedly from the Edo period, valued at $1.2 million. I'd examined it carefully, noting inconsistencies in the silk aging and suspicious uniformity in the mineral pigments. I'd rejected it, filed my report, and thought that was the end of it. But 2 weeks later, I saw it listed in our private sales catalog, authenticated and sold to a collector in Hong Kong. That was the first red flag. There were many more to follow. I discovered a pattern. Pieces I rejected would disappear from the official inventory, but resurface in private sales to exclusive clients. Always authenticated by someone else, always with my preliminary examination, mysteriously absent from the records. When I tried to bring it up with Victoria, she dismissed my concerns, suggesting perhaps my examinations weren't as thorough as I thought. The insult to my professional integrity stung, but it also made me suspicious. I started staying late, using my access codes to dig through private sale records going back 3 years. What I found made my blood run cold. Dozens of forgeries, all sold to private collectors with falsified authentication papers that bore my forged signature. They were using my reputation, my expertise, to legitimize fakes. I documented everything, creating my own authentication markers on pieces I examined, microscopic identifiers that wouldn't show up in photographs but would prove whether I'd actually handled the piece. Then I compared my records with the official ones. The discrepancies were staggering. One evening, I followed Victoria to a warehouse in Queens. She met with Damon Creed, a restoration expert with a reputation for being able to age anything to look centuries old. Through the window, I watched them examining a vase I'd authenticated as genuine Ming Dynasty just days before. They were discussing how to create 6 identical copies. That night, I went home and called the FBI. Agent Isabella Reyes, a specialist in art crime, had been tracking similar patterns across multiple auction houses. My information was the break she'd been waiting for. We worked together for months, building an airtight case. I wore wires to meetings, copied thousands of documents, and maintained my cover even as the stress ate away at me. The Han Dynasty collection was supposed to be the culmination of our investigation. Hundreds of millions in supposedly ancient artifacts that I knew were being manufactured in a workshop in New Jersey. The FBI was going to raid the opening gala, catching Victoria, her clients, and her suppliers all in one sweep. But something had gone wrong. Victoria had somehow gotten wind of the investigation. Not enough to stop her operations, but enough to start covering her tracks. That's when I knew I had to force her hand. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You're making a big mistake. This goes deeper than just Victoria. Stop now or you'll regret it. Some secrets should stay buried." I deleted the message and left Victoria's office. The FBI agents would be questioning her now, but I knew she was right about one thing. She would be back. Victoria had connections, lawyers, and probably compromising information on half the people in this building. An arrest didn't mean a conviction. In the elevator, I got another text, this one from Agent Reyes. "She's lawyered up, not saying anything. We need you to come in for a formal statement." I was about to reply when the elevator stopped at the 20th floor. Mac Reed stepped in, and suddenly the space felt much smaller. He pressed the emergency stop button. "You have no idea what you've done," he said quietly, not meeting my eyes. "This isn't just about fake art, Nadia. This is about money laundering for people you really don't want to cross. People who don't call lawyers when they're upset." My heart hammered against my ribs. "Are you threatening me, Mac?" "I'm trying to warn you." He finally looked at me, and I saw genuine fear in his eyes. "They have leverage on everyone here. Everyone. That includes you." He paused. "The Moretti painting. Your first year here, remember?" The blood drained from my face. The Moretti was a Baroque painting I'd authenticated early in my career. It had later been exposed as a forgery, though the scandal had been hushed up. I'd always blamed myself for missing the signs, seeing it as my one great professional failure. "That wasn't your mistake," Matt continued. "They set you up. Created the forgery after you'd authenticated the real one, then swapped them. They've been holding that over you without you even knowing it. If this goes to trial, that's going to come out. Your entire career will be destroyed." "You're lying," I whispered, but even as I said it, pieces were falling into place. The way Victoria had hired me right after the Moretti incident. How she'd been so understanding, so supportive, telling me everyone made mistakes. "Check your email," Max said. "The real one, not your work account." With shaking hands, I pulled out my phone. There was an email from an address I didn't recognize, with attachments, photos of me examining the Moretti painting, documents with my signature. But also something else. A chemical analysis report dated 2 weeks after my authentication, showing modern pigments in the paint. "They replaced it after you'd signed off on it," Max said. "Then let it be discovered as a fake 6 months later. You've been their insurance policy from day one. If you testify against them, they'll claim you've been knowingly authenticating forgeries for years. The Moretti will be their proof." The elevator felt like it was spinning. Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd built, had been a lie from the beginning. They'd marked me, groomed me, used me. Mac reached over and pressed the button to restart the elevator. "Walk away, Nadia. Tell the FBI you were mistaken. Say you misunderstood what you saw. They'll let you go if you do that. Victoria likes you, despite everything. She sees you as a protege. The elevator opened at the lobby. Max stepped out, then turned back. You have 24 hours to decide. After that, things get complicated. I stood there as the doors closed, my mind racing. But instead of fear, I felt something else building inside me. Rage. Pure, crystalline rage. They'd stolen 5 years of my life. They'd used my reputation, my expertise, my passion for art, and turned it into a tool for their crimes. They thought they owned me. They were wrong. I took out my phone and called Agent Reyes. We need to meet, not at your office, somewhere secure. I paused. And bring someone from financial crimes. This is bigger than we thought. 4 hours later, I sat in a nondescript hotel room in Newark with Agent Reyes and 2 other agents. On the table between us were laptops, documents, and cups of coffee that had long gone cold. They're right about the Moretti, Agent Reyes said after reviewing everything. If they present this in court, it would seriously damage your credibility as a witness. Unless we prove they orchestrated it, I said. Mac Reed just admitted it to me in the elevator. He's scared. If we can flip him? No judge would accept testimony obtained from a conversation in a stopped elevator with no recording, one of the other agents said. I leaned forward. Then we need to give them something they want more than me, something that makes keeping me quiet worthless. I pulled out my laptop. For the past 3 months, I haven't just been documenting their current operations. I've been tracing the provenance of every major piece Thorne & Sons has sold in the last decade. Do you want to know how many are sitting in museums right now? Agent Reyes' eyes widened. Museums? 17 major museums worldwide have pieces that I can prove are forgeries sold through Thorne & Sons. The Metropolitan Museum of Art alone has 3. I turned my laptop screen toward them. But here's the interesting part. The payments for these pieces didn't just come from the museums. There were private donors involved, donors who got significant tax breaks for their contributions. Tax fraud, the financial crimes agent said, suddenly very interested. It gets better, I continued. I tracked the donation patterns. The same donors who contributed to purchasing these pieces also happened to be on the boards of these museums. They knew they were buying forgeries. The museums were being used to launder money and create tax shelters. Agent Reyes stood up, pacing. This is huge. This is international. We're going to need to coordinate with multiple agencies. I can get you more, I said. But I need protection. Real protection. And I need immunity for the Moretti situation. Done, Reyes said immediately. But we need everything. Every document, every email, every conversation you can remember. I worked with them through the night, building a case that went far beyond simple art fraud. By morning, we had enough to bring down not just Victoria and Thorne & Sons, but an entire network of criminals who had been using the art world to move dirty money for decades. But I wasn't done. Victoria had said she'd be back in the afternoon. I intended to be there when she arrived. The next morning, I walked back into Thorne & Sons as if nothing had happened. Maya was at her desk, looking nervous. Nadia, what's going on? There were FBI agents here yesterday, and Victoria hasn't come back. She'll be here, I said calmly, heading to my office. I spent the morning doing what I did best, examining pieces. The Han Dynasty collection had indeed arrived, and as I studied each piece, I documented every sign of forgery. The artificial aging on the bronze vessels, the too perfect symmetry of supposedly hand-carved jade, the machine-cut precision on items that should have shown the irregularities of ancient tools. At exactly 2 p.m., Victoria walked back into the building. She moved through the galleries like she owned them, which technically she did, or at least her family did. She came straight to my office. Still here, I see, she said, closing the door behind her. I thought you might have run. Why would I run? I asked, not looking up from the jade sculpture I was examining. I haven't done anything wrong. She laughed, a cold sound. Haven't you? The Moretti painting says otherwise. I finally looked up, meeting her gaze. You mean the painting you swapped out after I authenticated it? The one you've been holding over my head for 5 years without my knowledge? Her smile faltered slightly. Prove it. I don't have to, I said, standing up. Because it doesn't matter anymore. The FBI doesn't care about the Moretti. They care about the 17 museums displaying forgeries you sold them. They care about the tax fraud, the money laundering, the connection to international crime syndicates. You're bluffing. I pulled out my phone, showing her an email from Agent Reyes. They're executing search warrants in 12 states right now. Your house in the Hamptons, your apartment on the Upper East Side, the warehouse in Queens, Damon's workshop in New Jersey. They're freezing your accounts, Victoria. All of them. Even the ones in the Cayman Islands. For the first time since I'd known her, Victoria Thorne looked afraid. But here's the best part, I continued. Remember those packages I sent to your defrauded collectors? I didn't just send them proof their pieces were fake. I sent them documentation showing where their real pieces ended up. Would you like to guess who's been collecting the originals while selling forgeries to everyone else? Victoria's face had gone pale. That's right. You and your family have been building a private collection of priceless artifacts using your clients' money to fund the purchases. Every fake you sold, you kept the original. The FBI is cataloging your private collection right now. I imagine some of those pieces were reported stolen from their countries of origin. You destroyed everything, Victoria whispered. My family's legacy, our reputation, everything we built. No, I said firmly. You destroyed it the moment you decided to build it on lies. I just exposed the truth. There was a knock at the door. Agent Reyes entered with 2 other agents. Victoria Thorne, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, money laundering, and violation of the National Stolen Property Act. As they read her rights, Victoria kept her eyes on me. This isn't over. My lawyers will destroy you on the stand. The Moretti will come out. Your career will be finished. Maybe, I said, but at least it will be honest. That's more than you can say. They led her away, and I was left alone in my office, surrounded by the fake Han Dynasty pieces. I picked up the jade sculpture I'd been examining, feeling its weight, admiring the craftsmanship even though it was a forgery. There was something poetic about it. A beautiful lie, exposed by an ugly truth. Over the next weeks, the art world exploded. The scandal made international headlines, museums launched internal investigations, collectors filed lawsuits. The Thorne family empire, built over generations, crumbled in days. I testified before a grand jury, laying out everything I knew. Yes, the Moretti came up. But with the evidence I'd provided about how the forgery was created after my authentication, combined with Mac Reed's eventual cooperation in exchange for a plea deal, my reputation survived. Scarred, but intact. The trial itself was a sensation. Victoria tried to paint me as a disgruntled employee who'd made mistakes and was trying to cover them up by destroying the company. But the evidence was overwhelming. The forged signatures, the doctored provenance documents, the network of forgeries spanning continents. When Damon Creed took a plea deal and testified about the workshop where he created hundreds of forgeries on Victoria's orders, her defense crumbled. She was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. Elias Thorne, her father-in-law and the company patriarch, died of a heart attack during the trial. His son, Julian Thorne, Victoria's husband, was arrested in Beijing and extradited to face charges. The entire network came apart like a house of cards in a hurricane. As for me, I found myself in a strange position. My reputation as the whistleblower who brought down one of the art world's most prestigious auction houses was both a blessing and a curse. Some saw me as a hero, others saw me as a traitor to the industry. But I'd received 7 job offers within a week of the verdict, all from institutions that wanted someone who could spot forgeries and, more importantly, wouldn't stay quiet about them. I chose to go independent. I started my own authentication service, working directly with collectors, museums, and law enforcement. My first client was one of Victoria's former victims, a collector from Dubai who wanted his entire collection verified. Half of it was fake. But instead of being angry with me for delivering bad news, he thanked me for telling him the truth. That became my new motto. In a world full of beautiful lies, your truth is the most powerful weapon. 6 months after Victoria's conviction, I received a letter from her in prison. I almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity won out. Nadia. It read, I suppose congratulations are in order. You played the game better than I gave you credit for. But ask yourself this. How many genuine pieces of art are now locked away in evidence lockers because of what you did? How many collectors have lost faith in the entire industry? How many legitimate businesses have suffered because of the cloud of suspicion you created? You may have exposed the lies, but in doing so, you've destroyed something beautiful. The art world thrives on mystery, on belief, on the stories we tell about objects. You've replaced wonder with suspicion, faith with doubt. I hope you're proud of yourself. History will remember me as a criminal, but it will remember you as the woman who killed the magic. I read the letter 3 times, then filed it away. Victoria still didn't understand. The magic wasn't in the lies we told about art. It was in the art itself, the real art. The human creativity and skill that went into creating something beautiful, something meaningful, something true. A year later, I was called to authenticate a collection for a museum in Boston. Among the pieces was a painting that made me stop in my tracks. It was the Moretti, the real one this time. It had been donated anonymously, with a note saying it should be displayed with its full story, the good and the bad. I authenticated it, officially this time, and wrote a detailed report not just about the painting itself, but about its journey through deception and back to truth. The museum displayed it with a plaque that told the entire story, my story, Victoria's story, the story of how the art world's obsession with value can sometimes obscure the actual value of art. Standing in front of that painting on opening night, I thought about everything that had happened. The betrayal, the fear, the anger, the triumph. Victoria had been wrong about one thing. I hadn't killed the magic. I'd revealed it. The real magic wasn't in the market value or the false narratives or the prestige of ownership. It was in the paint on the canvas, the vision of the artist, the connection between creator and viewer across centuries. People came up to me that night, some to congratulate me, some to ask questions, some just to see the woman who'd brought down Victoria Thorne. But I kept coming back to something a young art student said to me. "Thank you," she said simply, "for showing us that the truth matters more than the sale." That's when I knew it had all been worth it. Every threat, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt. In a world that increasingly seemed to value perception over reality, profit over authenticity, I'd chosen truth. And while that choice had cost me 5 years of being unknowingly complicit in a lie, it had given me something invaluable in return: freedom. The freedom that comes from knowing that your expertise, your knowledge, your eye for beauty and truth belongs to you and you alone. No one could take that from me. No one could use it against me. No one could corrupt it. I still work in authentication, and I still get threats occasionally from people who don't like the truths I tell. There are still forgers out there, still people trying to pass off beautiful lies as ugly truths, but now everyone knows where I stand. I'm Nadia Vance, and I tell the truth about art, no matter how uncomfortable that truth might be. Sometimes I think about Victoria in her prison cell, probably teaching other inmates about art history or running some kind of scheme from behind bars. She was brilliant, I'll give her that. In another life, she could have been one of the great art historians of our time, but she chose to use her brilliance for deception, and in the end, the truth caught up with her. As for the Thorne & Sons building, it was sold to a tech company that turned it into startup offices. Sometimes I walk past it and remember that morning when I tried to resign, when Victoria tore up my letter and told me I was an asset that didn't get to leave. She was right about one thing. I was an asset. Just not hers. I was my own. And that, more than any authentication, any expertise, any reputation, is the most valuable thing I possess. The knowledge that when the moment came to choose between comfortable lies and difficult truths, I chose truth, and I'd choose it again, every single time. Because in the end, that's what art is really about. Truth. The truth of human experience, captured in paint and stone and bronze. The truth of our desire to create something lasting, something beautiful, something that speaks across time and culture. The truth that even in a world of forgeries and facades, authenticity still matters. My name is Nadia Vance, and this is my true story.